Now, for too long, the model minority myth has been used to drive a wedge between Asian Americans and Black people. And this myth perpetuates a narrative that Asian Americans are inherently talented, law-abiding, and privileged, while Black people are somehow lacking in these qualities. Hello, guys, and welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, then don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notification bell so that you don't have to miss on any of our interesting videos. But the truth is, this myth is nothing more than a tool of oppression, designed to pit Black and people of color against each other. Now, as we will see in these videos, Asian Americans are finally recognizing the harm that this myth has caused and are speaking out against it. From the way the model minority myth is weaponized to harm Black people, to the hypocrisy of how Asian Americans are compared to palm color people, we will explore the complex web of racism and stereotypes that has been perpetrated for far too long. So with that said, join me as different Asian Americans share their thoughts and facts about this. I will be right back.
Let's get into it. The model minority myth is a tool used to divide people of color. It perpetuates the narrative that Asian Americans are math whiz geniuses and musical prodigies. Within this myth, Asians are characterized as polite, law-abiding, innately privileged, innately talented, and thriving. What's wrong with that? It sets up race as a hierarchy. This myth is a key factor in why finding unity between communities of color can be so difficult to find. We are constantly used as a pawn for white America to try and show it doesn't exist. We're the group to point at as a model minority. Not only does this myth aim to completely erase against Asian Americans, but also completely ignores deep-rooted history of exclusion. There are many statistics of poverty and hate crimes that I could pull to prove that the model minority myth is a myth, but I'm not going to sit here and continue to perpetuate comparing and contrasting POC experiences. That's just not what we need right now.
Did you ever notice how the model minority myth is only ever weaponized in one direction to harm Black people? When Black people are being compared to Asian Americans, then the hard work ethic and the emphasis on education are values that Asian Americans possess that Black people need to aspire to. But when white people are compared to Asian Americans, suddenly those same values are described as toxic. Black parents are told that they need to put more emphasis on education and discipline the way Asian American parents do, but with respect to white parents, suddenly Asian Americans are abusive, authoritarian tiger parents. And Black students are told that they need to study harder the way Asian American students do, but with respect to white students, suddenly it's unfair that they have to compete with the overachieving, nerdy Asian American students who lack social skills and were raised by the abusive, authoritarian tiger parents. And this is because the model minority myth is not something that was invented by Europeans about Asians. It is something that was invented in the United States about Asian Americans so that the United States could rehabilitate its reputation after the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II and to justify continued discrimination against Black people. Because according to the model minority myth, what Black people do is never enough, and what Asian Americans do is too much, because we live by a standard of just white.
Okay, more context about the model minority myth. So Professor Ellen Wu writes about this in her book, The Color of Success, and I found her framework to be super instructive. So when we zoom out and look at the broader Asian American history, we see for long periods of time, Asian Americans faced severe immigration restrictions that prohibited Asian people from entering this country or becoming naturalized citizens. Examples of that, there are so many. We can see in the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Johnson-Reed Act, which set the immigration restriction quotas in 1921. We can see that in many Supreme Court cases, like Bagasin did versus the United States and Nozawa versus the United States, both cases essentially said South Asians and Japanese Americans or Japanese people were not allowed to become naturalized citizens, which extended to other Asian groups. There was also the Asiatic Barred Zone, where the U.S. drew essentially on a map a zone around Asia and the Pacific that said these people were not allowed to enter the country or become naturalized citizens. So throughout the majority of Asian American history, Asians faced restrictions, both entering the country or becoming naturalized citizens. And in her framework, Dr. Ellen Wu says that for the majority of those experiences, Asians were seen as definitely not white, because white European immigrants were eventually able to become naturalized citizens. Now, in the 1960s, referring back to my previous video with the socio-political context, that was when things changed, right? During the Civil Rights Movement, the Cold War, etc. And when the manufactured lie, the manufactured narrative of the model minority became a thing, and that was used to further anti-Black oppression, that was when the narrative shifted. And Dr. Wu says Asians were now seen as definitely not Black. But don't be mistaken, folks, still not white. So that is an overview of the framework through which we can understand Asian Americans' racialized position in the United States of America.
Today's the last day of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, so I'm using whatever platform I have to discuss the role of Asian Americans in the Black Lives Matter movement. Though we certainly have non-Black privilege. You probably heard of the model minority myth. The model minority myth was invented by white Americans to kind of create a divide between Asian Americans and Black Americans, to make Asian people feel like they were the talented ones, successful ones, the ones who worked themselves up by their bootstraps, the ones who deserved praise and deserved to be in America. This still works. We're still siding with white people against Black people. Anti-Blackness runs rampant in Asian communities. The things I've heard family members say about Black people are inexcusable. I grew up in an Asian community, and I heard 99% of the time from other Asian people. Why is this still working? Why are we still siding with the oppressor instead of siding with people who have always had our back?
You know how there's that one quote, those who can do, those who can't teach? Or even in like a sporting event, those with the biggest mouth are the ones that tend to lose the game. It really says a lot about those who are saying DEI this and DEI that. And as much as I hate the model minority myth, do you reckon that the people who are going around saying they're going to get rid of DEI did not take it into consideration? Just think about it. If they actually did believe in the model minority myth, they would have realized that they made a biggest mistake, because whatever they're trying to get rid of was actually the thing that would be protecting them from us. So while white people are happy with the P's and the C's, getting A's, it is a pretty good investment.
Disproving model minority myth with data. Asian Americans originate from many different countries. Wide variation of education across groups. Wide variation of income. Highest income inequality compared to Black, white, Hispanic groups. As a result, this hurts Asians speaking up about issues, which is
Since you ask, Black people in the United States on average were more successful than Asian Americans up until the 1950s and 60s, when the United States started pushing the model minority myth. If you look at census data from the 1940s, Black people were earning significantly more than Asian people. But the United States was engaging in military actions in Asia under the guise of bringing democracy and fighting against communism when the rest of the world started to wonder, with the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, the Chinese Exclusion Act, and Jim Crow, what business did the United States have being in another continent telling other countries how to operate when they treat their own people so poorly? That's when the United States started to say, no, Asians are doing great. They work hard, they're quiet, they don't protest, and they are lifting themselves up by their bootstraps out of poverty. The problem is Black people who are protesting. And opportunities that were previously withheld from both Black and Asian people started being provided to Asian people and continued to be withheld from Black people. Then in 1964, when the Civil Rights Amendment finally passed and Black people were supposed to receive equitable access to those opportunities, in 1965, the United States opened the door to Asian immigration with the Hart-Celler Act and continued giving those opportunities to Asian people. Very importantly, the ability and resources to open, own, and operate businesses in Black neighborhoods, which effectively deprived Black people of the ability to invest in their own neighborhoods. Now, in case you're still thinking, no, it really is about emphasis on education, by the 1980s, an Asian American without a high school diploma was earning about the same as a white person without a high school diploma, and both were earning significantly more than a Black person without a high school diploma. So that has nothing to do with educational attainment and everything to do with the opportunities provided. But also that you inserted yourself in a conversation between two Asian Americans to weaponize Asian American identity against Black people is just gross.
The myth of the model minority is based in stereotypes. It perpetuates a narrative in which Asian American children are whiz kids or musical geniuses. Within the myth of the model minority, tiger moms force children to work harder and be better than everyone else, while nerdy, effeminate dads hold prestigious but not leadership positions in STEM industries like medicine and accounting. And this myth characterizes Asian Americans as a polite, law-abiding group who have achieved a higher level of success than the general population through some combination of innate talent, and pull yourselves up by your bootstraps immigrants driving. Now, while most people agree that negative stereotypes of Asian Americans are harmful, some still question the harm of the model minority myth. What could be so bad about being part of a group that's seen as being successful? I would say a lot actually if you ask me, because this affects not only Asian Americans but other Black and people of color. Data about Asian American achievement typically lumps this diverse population together into a singular group. Taken as a whole, it shows that Asian Americans tend to hold higher degrees and earn larger incomes than the general population. And these successes are often attributed to differences in family attitudes toward education. From these metrics and attributions, the stereotypes emerges that Asians are winning in their pursuit of the American dream. But when we break these numbers down, the myth begins to crack. Take pay disparities, for example. For every dollar the average palm color man makes in the United States, an Asian Indian woman makes $1.21 and a Taiwanese woman makes $1.16, a Samoan woman makes $0.62, a Burmese woman makes 50 cents. The experiences of these groups are not the same. Now, the model minority myth is just one of a collection of stereotypes about Asian American people. Popular television and films exoticize Asian culture and peoples. If you're a man, you're a Kung Fu master. If you're a woman, you're a submissive S object. Now, if you're a gender non-binary or transgender, you don't exist at all. Mickey Rooney's R to the Cis portrayal in Breakfast at Tiffany's lives in our collective imagination, alongside every East or South Asian actor who has played a bit part as a humorless doctor or IT guy. Buried under these stereotypes, the message is clear. Asian Americans are all the same and all different from all other Americans. On one hand, Asian Americans are often perceived as having assimilated better than other minority groups. On the other hand, Asian Americans are seen as having some foreign quality that renders them perpetual outsiders. It's a paradox familiar to every Asian American who regularly faces this question. But where are you from originally? Now, the myth says that Asian Americans have played within the rules of the American system to their own group benefit. The success of some groups of Asian American immigrants is often held as an example toward which other groups should strive. It suggests that Asian Americans are doing well and that if other groups would only work harder, have stronger family bonds, and get over their histories of oppression, they too would succeed. And when paired with R to the Cis myths about other ethnic or racial groups, the model minority myth is used as evidence to deny or downplay the impact of R to Cism and discrimination on people of color in the United States. Now, given the history of that impact on Black Americans particularly, the myth is ultimately a means to perpetuate anti-Blackness. The model minority myth pits people of color against one another and creates a hierarchy in which Asian people are often represented at the top. By putting people of color in competition with one another, the myth distracts us from striving together toward liberation for all. Now, the model minority myth has been an insidious tool used to perpetuate racism and harm Black people. By portraying Asian Americans as inherently successful, law-abiding, and hardworking, this myth has been used to blame Black people for their own oppression. Now, the narrative goes like this. Asian Americans are able to achieve success through hard work and determination. So why can't Black people do the same? And this logic is not only flawed, but also deliberately ignores the systemic barriers and racism that Black people face. Moreover, this myth has been used to pit Asian Americans against Black people, creating a false narrative of competition and division. It's a classic tactic of divide and conquer, where the oppressor uses one marginalized group against one to maintain their power and control. But here's the truth. Asian Americans and Black people are not competitors. We need to be comrades in the fight against racism and oppression. I feel Asian Americans need to recognize the ways in which they have been used as tools to harm Black people. Now, the term Asian American was coined in the late 1960s as a means of harnessing the collective power of people of Asian origin, much in the same way the term Hispanic was first used. Now, Asian American political identity was strongly inspired by the Black liberation movement. Today, more inclusive terms like Asian Pacific American, APA, or Asian American Pacific Islander, AAPI, signal the continued need for collective striving against similar experiences of racism and imperialism within our various ethnic subgroups. Now, this collective political identity remains important. At the same time, focusing solely on collective identity can perpetuate the model minority myth. The experiences of the most visible Asian American ethnic groups can hide the experiences of other groups. Now, some studies of educational achievement have shown that certain Asian ethnic groups, particularly those from parts of East and South Asia, indeed score very well in some subject areas. When students from these groups consistently do better than even palm color students, it is easy for educators to take inherently biased actions based on a belief that all Asian students are innately intelligent and hardworking. Now, those same studies, however, reveal that other Asian ethnic groups have vastly different results. For example, Southeast Asian and Pacific Islander students in particular often underperform when compared with all other racial and ethnic groups. As an educator, it is important to understand the different histories and experiences of Asian American and Pacific Islander students and communities. Some of these communities arrived in America as refugees, escaping war or genocide, and some were imported as sharecroppers to replace enslaved people of African descent after the Civil War. Now, still other communities, particularly those native to various Pacific islands, were here long before palm color settler colonialism. As educators, we must unlearn the biased, simplistic beliefs that you hold about what it means to be Asian American or Pacific Islander in order to better attend to the real needs of students and communities. Honestly, it's good that some Asian Americans are finally realizing that they've been nothing but tools to harm Black people. And this is important because it affects everyone, Asian Americans and Black people. And this is just used as a tool to divide minority communities. I don't know what you guys think, but share your thoughts as well in the comment section. Thank you for always watching, and see you in our next video as we bring you another interesting video.